Come on! Hello, hello. This week we got Logan Cornelius, the loudmouth from down south who headed west, apparently. Logan, what's the latest and greatest, my guy?
Hey, doing well. Just up here in California, not the most ideal time to move, but we're doing it. We're here.
Yeah, so what brought you out of Texas? Like you were like the face of Texas, and I think to some extent you still kind of are, but now now you're on the sunnier West Coast.
Yeah. So my wife got a job out here, so kind of moved out for that, and thankfully with my job just being remote and flexible, able to kind of move where she has opportunities. So yeah, I got it here in Oakland and moved here in February, a month before the world shut down. So
Well, at least you didn't have to
um,
move in the middle of it. Like that would have
that's
been a lot worse, especially heading
that's
into California during that time. Like,
That's true. We got like a month and a half of like, and not even knowing what was gonna happen. A month and a half of just seeing as much as we possibly could for like 6 straight weekends. We were like filled it with seeing San Francisco and just like as much as we could of Northern California. And then when everything happened, we're like, oh shoot, like I'm glad we got all that in. But
yeah, seriously.
yeah.
Jeez, how are you liking like Northern California in general? It's like pretty different than Texas for that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the way I've explained it is there's so much pretty stuff here. Like just the state in general is so pretty.
Hmm.
I love Texas, but it just doesn't have the nature that California has. And we've gone camping a few times, and we've done as much like kind of outdoorsy stuff as possible. And kayaking, we're going whale watching next week, and because outdoorsy stuff like it's open, you can stay distance.
Right.
Um, but it's hard to fully answer that question because I mean, kind of from our point of view, where we're not able to experience it like we know we could if
Yeah.
everything was normal. So, I wish we could experience more and do more, but what we can do, we've enjoyed, and it's just beautiful out here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of jealous. Like I almost wish I got locked in California somehow during all of this. That'd be great. I mean, I guess in the early days it was a little bit scarier, but and I guess California's still not even doing that well with COVID, right? Like, or is that mostly Southern California though?
I think it's mostly Southern California. If I'm going to be honest, I haven't really followed the numbers as much lately. Kind of just
Mm-hmm.
stayed inside. I've done a little bit of traveling and just the things I've done, try to take as much precaution as possible and just follow guidelines. But like as far as just being here, I'm just kind of staying inside and not doing a whole lot. So, but I know Southern California's had a lot more of the higher numbers. And there's been, I think, Northern California, at least in the Bay Area, things have been on lockdown a lot more compared to everywhere.
Right. Yeah, no, they've definitely been more conservative with opening up, which I think is at least helpful. So that's good. With the whole move to California, obviously like your work is a little bit different, but you're able to work remotely with lockdown and everything. How different is like your job day to day now, both like I guess in practice like at home and like within the company itself. Like I'm sure that a lot of what you do has been affected by this.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, like what I actually do hasn't really changed by the move at all. That's kind of what is kind of beneficial. Is like it doesn't necessarily matter where I am. I'm able to kind of still do what I do the same. So still work on a lot of kind of integration automations and connecting systems, and so still kind of able to do that the same. Just I would always go into a co-working space, so now I'm pretty much home every day now. I'm not really going to a co-working space, not at all going to co-working space. So really, as far as like work, I'm staying indoors, but as far as what I'm actually doing, it's pretty much stayed the same since it, which I guess is a blessing as well, just because we're able to have work to do. So
Right.
thankful
No,
for that.
that's definitely true. So when you're setting up these systems, is that mostly for like getting sets to retailers and stuff like that and like warehouse inventory? Is that what you're
It
still doing here or have roles evolved?
Yeah, it involves that, but it's really just like the internal systems we use to make those transactions happen. Kind of
Oh, okay.
connect those, and kind of right now we're in the midst of like changing some bigger systems, and I have a lot involved. We're just making sure the systems we use in the old way that they're connected and working with this new like ERP um, that we're moving to. So very much a lot connected with making sure everything's connected and working right, and data and information is being transferred between systems, and finding more efficient and automated ways to do that.
Gotcha. So you're more on the like IT side instead of like dictating where things go and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. More so that for sure.
Okay, gotcha. Now, but like you did used to like be, uh, or like you did used to kind of send stuff around and like manage the warehouse inventory
Yeah.
more, right?
So that I mean that's still obviously it's less of what I do now because we're not actually doing it, but
Well, that's true. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I'm not really doing a whole lot of that right now, but I do kind of help make sure we have the equipment for like events and tournaments. Nora is more so the one kind of determining what we're sending, and me more so I'm just making sure those orders get in and get out.
You're
Whereas
right.
like yeah, she makes sure what because it used to like when I very first came on, is like I was determining what was being sent. And then thankfully when Nora came on, she could have more like responsibility around that and put more focus on it as it needed. So now she kind of determines that, and with the events and whatnot, or at least for tournaments, and then I'm making sure it gets there or making sure it gets to the van. And then for like trade shows, Skylar will put in what he wants, and then I make sure it gets there. But that's a small part of what I do. But obviously, right now, that's completely on pause. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess I thought that was a bigger role just because that's the role that I interact with the most as like a
yeah,
contractor for you guys. So like I'm always like it was always like, oh yeah, like Logan put in that order or like let me ask Logan, what happened with
yeah.
this or whatever. So I
Well,
thought that was a bigger role.
so that's well that's one of the kind of my like shining moments that I'm proud of is like it used to be a lot more, but I was kind of able to, and this is kind of what's led me into doing more automations and integrations, is I was able to really cut down the amount of time that whole process took to where the way we're managing everything and how it's being sent between our systems to where it was like a very small time consumption. So I had to focus on it less. So being able to like whittle the time down it took to do that was kind of something I did when I first started. So now I'm able to still do exactly what I was doing, but it's very much smaller compared to what I was doing.
Right, you just kind of organized all the information so that like it's an easier approval process and less
Yep,
hands-on. Cool.
exactly.
That's dope. So I guess like a lot of your role like hasn't changed at Spikeball. I mean, obviously, you don't have to speak for everyone in the company, but like, how has like the like culture changed amidst all of this as well? Like, I know the company like is pretty largely remote, but they also gathered at a lot of these events and stuff like that, and like I'm sure the company's not really getting together anymore, right?
Yeah, and it's weird because like you said, we are a remote company, and generally, even though we are remote, there's lots of opportunities for us to like see each other, whether it's events or like you going into the office to do different things or being different places. But like, yeah, with that, it's like we've hired several new people, and it's like I don't know when I'll actually get to meet them in person,
Yeah,
and it's
that's so
generally like
true.
like I'll go a few months if we hire someone until I meet them, and now it's like who knows? Hopefully in 2021 I'll get to meet these people and it'll be exciting when it happens. But there's going to be lots of people that I've worked with for a while now, and not be able to meet in person. So it's not necessarily like a huge effect, but like it's I mean even within like the Roundnet community, I think it's similar to where there's lots of new players that are playing all these names that are coming out, and it's like
Right.
generally get to meet them or see them in person, play them. But it until we can like meet them in person is different. So I'll be excited when we do, but I think that's the biggest thing for me is I love meeting all these new people, and just is put on pause right now.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of feeling that too. It's like legitimately why I started the podcast, and like I'm literally realizing that like I'm not gonna meet Ryder or whatever
Yeah,
until this is all over and like I finally go out to like a West Coast tournament that hopefully runs. But like I guess I could just like have him on the podcast. Like that's the only option right now. And I feel like,
yeah,
like every up and coming player like I got a pretty early look at. And like every up and coming player right now I get no looks at. And that's like
yep,
it's so weird adjusting to that. Like it feels surreal.
yeah. And like all these players are kind of like sectionalized in their different regions, and like everyone around them is kind of hyping them up. And
Mhm.
there's no real like litmus test of like, okay, like oh, let's see these players in action. So I mean, there's a little bit for those who've been going to tournaments and playing, but it really is interesting where we don't get to meet them or see them play, and it's kind of like oh, that's where they are, and hopefully eventually we'll get to.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has been cool like seeing these players kind of emerge from local communities with the emphasis put on them right now. Like it's been fun to watch like what Texas is doing amidst all of this, what Michigan's doing amidst all of
Hmm.
this. And there are others for sure, but those two kind of stand out to me. And I know you can speak a lot more towards, you know, Texas. One, I think I don't even really have that great of a understanding of how TASR really runs or like is structured. It seems like you guys have like a million things going on and they're all great. But I guess for me and for everyone listening, like what's like the structure that you have in place at TASR and why is that different from all these just like pickup groups that are going on around the country?
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, we very much like as like one of the very first RROs, kind of Brian and I built it with like the hub structure, and that's kind of like the core of what it is. And I'll give like the taser pitch that I give before tournaments. It's obviously Brian and I have been around for a while, been playing for a long time, and like and everyone else knows what we loved the most about Roundnet was like going to these different places and like having these friends. And like I would tell people like I could go anywhere in the country and like have someone who I would like be I'd be willing to stay on their couch and like they'd let me, and it's just the coolest thing.
Right.
But Texas we always referred to as like a roundnet island because no one really played in our neighboring states, and the fact that Texas is so huge, everyone who played there like was always isolated in their own little area.
Right, because
So
all
like
your cities are 3 hours apart from each other.
exactly,
It's as far as we travel to go into Indiana or Wisconsin. It's
exactly, it's stupid.
yeah,
And so like there's all these pockets around the US and we're like we want to recreate that. And what we realized is we'd always see these people like kind of pop up and like start to play and then it would die out. It's like kind of like these plants would start to grow and there'd be no soil, nothing to connect it to, and then it would die. And so we realized we really needed some kind of like formalized structure system to kind of connect everything. So when these players would pop up and be excited about it, we'd be like, hey, like we'll support you, we'll help you keep growing like this pickup group, and connect it with other people. And so that's kind of like where our hubs came out, where we wanted to not necessarily try to like go into an area and create a hub, but rather when someone was excited about the sport or had passion to kind of be able to work with them, be like, hey, let's start a hub in your area. We'll market it as an organization, let people know that you're playing there. And so then the larger we get, we're able to be like, hey, there's a hub here. And so now we have these hubs popping up all over, of people playing consistently. And then we can kind of market those like, hey, here's where we have everyone playing. So it's an easier place like contact TASR, or you look at our website, you see everywhere we have a hub. And then that's like the hubs are the base. It's like the entry point. And kind of the way I explain it is like we want to create a funnel. The hubs are the entry point. Those are like you can come whether you want to play competitively or whether you just want to play recreationally. The hubs are for you, and you get a chance to kind of play with the top players in your area, train, and kind of develop those friendships there. And then next, like we want to support clubs, like people who go to hubs regularly but want to start playing more committedly. So they may play 3, 4, 5 times a week. And I think Y Spike is a prime example of
hmm
that, where they were these guys who were playing and now they're studs and they're playing competitively and they're winning, and their skill is growing and it's awesome. And then like another example is there's this up and coming group called Spike in a city
hmm
called Frisco, and so a similar situation to Y Spike, where they would play and they're going to have a hub, but then they have this club of players who want to play competitively. And so we have that. And then ultimately at the top is we have Lone Star, which is our top players. And that we just really want to develop into like a pro club. Um, and so with that, it's like the top players in Texas that can compete together. And we're doing some things to try to kind of promote the pro level of that and have kind of some exciting stuff coming up in the next month to kind of really reinforce that pro idea. And with that, like when someone qualifies for Lone Star, like we pay them a signing bonus, and then there's bonuses throughout the year based on the performance at Texas majors and at SRA tournaments as well. So that really, and then what kind of keeps it all together is our majors. So right now it's like all of our hubs will have a major. Long term, the more hubs we have, we're not going to be able to have a tournament every major.
sure.
But our majors are kind of like it's our tournament series that connects it all. And so we have majors around the city. We just released our like major schedule for the rest of the year today, for our local Texas events, and kind of it all leads up to what we dubbed Texas Nationals, which is a chance to like do like a pro division type format. And so the way it's structured right now is where it's like you have a Texas player, and that player can bring anyone in from around the country or world, whatever, and then they can do that. It's the top 16 teams. So it's the idea of like, hey, we want our guys to kind of play with whoever they want if they qualify for this division. And so if Fred wants to bring in Preston to come play with him, he could. And so right now we're kind of looking at format in the midst of everything that's happening. I think we're hoping to kind of set kind of a testing um, rule in place so that we can bring in players from out of state and do it safely. So we're hoping to kind of like have people get tested and come, but we're still kind of talking about that format because we don't want to encourage people from traveling across the country too much. But we're kind of playing that as it comes since it's still a few months out. But kind of Texas Nationals Platinum Division, whatever is what everyone's playing for throughout the year at the majors, and they get points depending on how they finish in the Gold Division and the Gold Division. They qualify for advance. So it's basically Texas version of Premier. So basically, I think a lot of what we're doing is really just about a funnel to where we want to give players a chance to play recreational, and then we develop them through our majors and high school tournaments, college tournaments, which are on pause right now, but just developing because our high school scene is blowing up. Like we've had 4, 5, 6 high school clubs just pop up in the last few months. And then like we just found out that one of our high school clubs is considered an official extracurricular activity. So not just a club, but an extracurricular activity, which puts them on the same level as like any other high school sport at their school.
Oh
So like
wow.
they have practices, rosters, school funding. So we
What?
heard that like, yeah, we were pumped to hear that. So like it's a legit sport at this school. So high school is starting to grow, and obviously college everywhere is blowing up. So and on top of all that, we're trying to develop stats for our events to like just give more insight into our players and how they play and develop better streaming so people can see it. So we're trying to do a lot, and it's just Brian and I trying to figure out how we can balance that and make it happen. Is we want to grow the sport, and it's exciting to us. So a lot of passion involved.
Yeah, geez. I mean, I guess I like individually had heard a lot of these pieces, but it's so cool when you just like lay it out like that, and especially in the funnel, because like yeah, you guys have thought about this like bottom to top. Like how do we create a funnel for someone to start taking this a little bit more seriously? And that's something that like I've always wanted to do with Origin and stuff like that. And I think at some
Yeah.
point we just didn't put that structure in place in order to actually accomplish that. It was basically like Origin, you get out what you put in. And like
Hmm.
but there weren't a lot of like incentives or like level ups that were clear. It was just like, oh, once you're better, you just compete against the other people in Origin better. But that doesn't really like that's not a great incentive structure, especially once you
Yeah.
like reach a point where you're like gonna be like the fourth best team for a little bit. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't actually push you to do anything versus like having something to like strictly aspire to and also aspire to outside of the national scene. And that's why like I think this is really smart, and I think a lot of clubs should do this because what I think is unfortunate is like I think there are a lot of people that are coming up in the sport and they're doing really well, but they're not going to be able to compete in like top eights right away
Right.
or
Right.
even top 16s. Like they're not going to make pro division at nationals, but like they could compete with some of those lower teams. And the incentive right there is basically like, hey, you have to just like travel around the country and get like your butt kicked a little bit,
Hmm.
and you got to ride that out until it gets good. But this kind of allows you to like succeed locally a little bit and be like, oh, like I am making progress and things are getting better, and hopefully that actually then develops talent that converts nationally as well. And so I think
Yeah.
like I think a lot of people in our community like to complain that like there is inequity in the sport, and like you know it shouldn't be so like if you're a top player, you just continue to be a top player. And I think this really goes against that and like gives people like a list of like this is my next goal. This is your next goal. Um, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because just like that's kind of like the way we see it is like like you start out in high school. Let's say you start high school, like let's win the high school state championship, and at that point, then like let's go for qualifying for gold. And then once you qualify for gold, like hey, maybe you're ready to go to an SRA tournament, so then you can qualify for premier. So yeah, like you were saying, just give them those small steps in between to like find that success, so it's smaller. And I think we're going to see a lot more people do this. And for us, like I know a lot of people have the expert division, and it's always open, which I think is great to allow people to do it. But we've seen that just having the gold division gives people so much motivation. Like, oh, I want to qualify for that, and it gives you that like, hey, I qualified for Premier excitement to kind of push you to that next level, and it just keeps this high threshold like competitive division at our events as well, which always makes for fun games.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely just puts more on the line. And because especially with at some of these local ones, the talent disparity can be
Hmm.
disincentivizing for someone kind of coming up because they're like, all right, I know when I enter this tournament, like I can't make it past the round of 8. There are just too many good people above. But like if you can slowly earn points and then like
Yep.
accumulate up to something, that's so smart. And then it's also cool that you're looking specifically into like facilitating the idea of becoming pro and outside of a national scene where it's a lot more saturated and there are people that have just been at it for longer and are like winning because they have experience. And
Yeah.
so like how do you guys go about like I mean obviously it sounds like you've got some things in the pipeline here so you don't have to like spill the beans here. I'll let you have your surprise or whatever, but like
Yeah.
what kind of incentives do you have along the way for like becoming pro in Texas right now through Lone Star?
Yeah, so like for us, it's whenever you qualify for Lone Star. So each year we're gonna do like a Lone Star jersey, and at this point, like we're basically subsidizing it. So it's like, hey, it's this full jersey, pay $25 or less. So like we'll cover most of the price,
Mhm.
and you can get the Lone Star jersey. Eventually, we'll offer it for free, and then we always offer like one Lone Star items. Like last year, we had the little armband things.
Yep.
This year, we have the arm sleeves. So those have been and with that, we're kind of asking like the Lone Star players, like, hey, what do you want the item to be this year? And so they really like the arm sleeves, and so each year we want like a unique thing. So those are some things, and there's like we like want to get them like some free stuff as much as we can. And like for us, for me and Brian, it's not like eventually we want to be able to like provide more money to ourselves for this, but right now we're not taking any money. It's more so just like our passion, and we've been
Yeah.
players for a long time, so we get that. So we want to find ways to kind of grow the company and the players and reward them. So kind of get them some stuff, and then obviously the signing bonus um, and the bonuses throughout the year for placement, and then kind of like coming up. Like well, I'll just say that we have a squad matchup with some more pro players coming up. So
Ooh,
a
all right.
first of a kind event coming up. So we're actually going to post about it later today.
Oh,
You got some more
okay.
details, but trying to work on some legit type of streaming for that and getting that going. So that's another one where like our top players will compete for that, and that adds a little bit. So I think we have a total of 15 Lone Star players now because generally to qualify for Lone Star, you have to be premier, live in Texas, and finish top 3 at a Texas major.
Mhm.
So those are the 3 qualifications. Obviously, without SRA this year, people couldn't get Premier. So we
Right.
we recently ran the Gold League, and so the top 4 teams in Gold League all actually were able to earn Premier. So we did add in general, Lone Star players are always going to be Premier, but we did add a few non-Premier players this year because they
Right.
couldn't earn Premier. So with that, I think we have 14 total. So there'll be like people vying for the top 10 spots to compete. Um, and so that'll be kind of fun there, and it'll probably be determined by our Texas Top 100 and how people place at our majors. So it all kind of interconnects as well. So that kind of competition is something we want to have more of, and just be able to put our players up against other areas, other clubs' top players. And I think Texas, in and of itself, regardless of what it is, already has this pride to it.
Mhm.
So we kind of want to instill that and build the Lone Star brand and the TASR brand and just show off our players. And admittedly, the guys now that are competing are way better at building brands and connecting than like us old school players ever were.
Mhm.
Like um, certainly when Brian and I played, like we were never really that good at just like connecting and building our brand. But like the A&M guys, White Spike guys, they're all really great at building their brands, and so we want to build them up and build up Texas in general, and like show that hey, like Texas is a force to be reckoned with, and like we're deep and competitive. So I think putting our top players against others allows that, and then it also like just having them kind of builds like people want to be Lone Star. Like people at the tournament, like hey, I'm coming for gold, and then I want my check for Lone Star. Like I'll be there. I'm gonna get top 3, and so
Mhm.
um, players like that all the time. And so they see these Lone Star players, and it automatically gives people like who to look up to, like who are the players in this state, like who can I compete against, and then as they develop and they become better, but oh yeah, as I developed, I was always looking at the Lone Star players and was watching people like Fred and Grant and David and like Colton. So those are like some of the, and Rahul obviously. So helps put a name to those people and build their personal brands, competitive brands. So that's all just kind of added into the Lone Star bonus. So that's something we're really working on now. Is we actually have a few guys who are like interning for us, just helping us with our marketing because Brian and I do a lot of things well. Marketing has not been one thing we've done well historically.
Mm-hmm.
And so bringing these guys on has really helped. Just like Luke Mowry has been running our TASR Instagram for the last several months, and he's been doing a great job and just helping build that out.
Yeah, no, I mean things have been, great content wise. I mean you guys play so damn much that like you guys just have a lot more, footage and rallies, and you guys are, making a concerted effort to organize that and put that out. And like as someone that also does content creation, like God, I wish I had an army of people that were willing to do that. Like it is rough. It's
Yeah.
it's tougher than people think. Everyone's like, oh, you just post something to Instagram, but like that can take 2 hours of your time, like to do it
Yeah.
well. Like it's it's tougher than a lot of people give that credit for. And it's cool too because like you've also like not only incentivized players to like want to improve and get better and start taking the sport more seriously, but like you've also created that structure for them to like want to be involved in growing Texas itself and like being a part of that and being helpful. So instead of everyone going like, "Hey, what's TASR doing for me?" like people are going like, "Hey, how can I like help with this?" Like,
Yeah.
and that's pretty cool. What are you doing like revenue generating wise? What's like underlying this right now?
Yeah, so I mean total revenue. Obviously, this year's a little different. Last year, I think we did like 10 to 15,000. This year, we'll probably do somewhere in the 15 to 20,000 range.
Wow.
So, which is great for like just putting it back in and we're able to put more into our events too. So, I mean, profit's not skyrocketing out of the roof because I mean everything's going back into the business and like we're paying like Lone Star players. But just like from what we're generating, able to put back in allows us to put in higher quality events, and
Mhm.
we're working on like training tournament directors so that then we can pay them to run the events. So it's like not Brian and I running all of them. So we really that's something we want to build up to is creating this admin base
Right.
of just Roundnet fans to where we have people who are wanting to helping run our events and do it well, and so then we can work with them to run awesome events. So it's less of Brian and I having to do everything. So just kind of like spreading that knowledge and the skill and really equipping both our players and equipping those who want to work on the admin side and want to do that. And so I think I posted on the SRA page the other day, but like right now, Brian and I are really more focused on like how can we make money so that we can pour that money back into our community and like
Exactly.
pay our players, pay our people who want to run events more so and get them doing it, get them hyped because I don't need the money right now from TASR. Yeah, it'd be nice to have, but like I don't need it. So it's nice being able to use it to kind of pay people to help grow the sport.
Right, with a massive upside, down the line when you're able to start taking a
Yes,
salary. Like that's
exactly.
that's yeah, and I think that's something that people also just don't understand when everyone's like, you know, oh, like people should just start doing this. Like it's a lot of work, and like the amount of work that you're putting in for no money is like not appealing to very many
Yeah,
people. And like part of that has to come from just like being an overly like generous person and like being okay with like, all right, no, I'm kind of growing this like for the scene. But like asking people to do that is so
yeah,
tough. And you've seen, like Taylor Sanford able to like not do that, but he's running his very different than you in
yeah,
general. He's more going to the like event side of things, and you're going into the like more competitive end of things. So
yeah,
you're almost creating like, I mean, of course, I always bring it back to esports, but like you're almost creating an esports team in Texas, like with a bunch of like hubs around that also are kind of esports teams. I don't, yeah, it's like, it's interesting. You
yeah,
got like a feeder program and like a major league and a
yeah,
minor league team. And like, yeah, like when you run this stuff, like you lose money for a while. I mean, you've been
yeah,
involved in the the back end of the competitive side. Like
Yeah,
Spikeball's not making a lot of money on competitive, and I'd venture to say
exactly.
they're losing money. So like,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to be willing to like take that loss for a little bit and put in a lot of work for like upside down the line.
for sure. And like we had our Wiley Major on, um, last Saturday, and like I helped run that, and so like I flew in, I prepared for the tournament, like ran the tournament, and it was 107 degrees. The tournament ran for 12 hours from setup to put down. Like we had all these COVID cautions in place that I was like working on like enforcing as much as I can, wearing a mask all day, and then on Sunday had to drive from Dallas back to Houston to fly back to California, and I was exhausted. And part of me is like, wow, like that was so exhausting. Like, what am I doing? But then like after I got rest and tired, it's like, man, like people loved that, like seeing that happen and just like thinking about what we're doing and just like the legacy we're building and just seeing art. Like when I see Fred beat Ryder and Preston, like
Hmm.
part of me is proud of that because it's like he's playing in our system. Like we're giving him opportunities to do well. Or like when I see Grant be at the Spike House and like building his brand and like everyone knowing nice, and then Y Spike doing their thing. Like part of me is like proud. It's like us doing this gives them the platform to do that and like building that legacy in Texas and just knowing like way back what the Texas players were when this all started and just those friendships and seeing them grow. Like after some rest and going through, it's like, man, it's worth all that hard work and like um and doing it and doing it well. So yeah, and the passion, it's exciting because the passion helps drive that and be
Right.
willing to be exhausted and have 12-hour days and 100-degree weather that are my weekends. So then when I come back, like I'm going back to work and don't really have that weekend, but it's okay because connecting with those people and doing those events is refreshing in its own way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, kind of getting back to what I was saying, like those, I think people like you that are willing to do that are few and far between, and like our community needs people like that to step up and like see the bigger picture and just try to like drive things forward for the sake of driving things forward, because everything pays off eventually in the end when you
Yeah,
like are working that hard. And it's cool to like just watch that. Um,
completely agree.
yeah. So how has like your competitive arc kind of gone over these like last couple of years? And where are you looking to go competitively in the future for like yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, obviously, I think 2018 was, yeah. I mean, well, that was one of the best seasons by far, being I think up to number 8 in the country, and then number 8 in the pro division, and then being Spikeball Elite. Like that was exciting. And then 2019, obviously, a lot of up and down. Playing with Brian was fun, but a lot of up and downs. Like we hadn't really had that much success leading into 2019, and then um, 2019 we had success. We had some bad tournaments, some good tournaments. I mean, I achieved my highest finish ever, finally getting second. Have so many cups from third place, but
Right.
achieving that second was really great. And obviously, winning Premier was like the most exciting disappointment I think I've ever felt. Is kind of how I explain it because it's like, like coming off Pro Division the year before and playing this long, like not qualifying for Pro Division, like I can't be satisfied with that. I can't be happy with like being in Premier and like winning Premier and people are saying, oh, it was a Premier tournament. So you don't really get much credit for that, especially from where we were before. So definitely had a lot of fire coming off 2019, and especially going into this year, playing with Grant was really excited about that.
Right.
And so like still want to play competitive. I think for me, who is not as solid as a serve baller as a lot of other people, like I certainly want to see a change in rules just because I think it'll help the sport, but also like I think it will help people who aren't as serve bally. But yeah, like I'm still looking to compete. I think it's been a little unfortunate just because no one really is playing here in Northern California right now. We have like a
Right.
group message, and every week, Zach Babka, he's from like UC Davis, which is not too far from Oakland. We'll be like, hey, who wants to play? I'll always be like, hey, I'm down to play. And like those are the only two. So right now, currently, like since we've had the time, just focusing a lot on TASR. Haven't been able to kind of compete as much as I'd like, but I think a little bit of a break is good for for me right now. But certainly, like I want to achieve more. Like I think in my mind, like I want to get a pitcher before I finish. And for me,
All
it's just like
right.
a disappointment in myself that like I've been playing this long and haven't got one. Um, and so that's certainly what I want. That's ultimately my goal before I retire. And I'd love for it to happen. If it doesn't, we'll see. But yeah, like not done competing. I just love competing so much and going to events. So yeah, so just kind of playing as it goes. Hopefully we can have a 2021 season. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like been consistently every year through my premiere, it was like either like I mean top 16 is kind of where I've been in the at least finishing at nationals, and in general I think I've been for the most part finished in the top 16 every year throughout my career. At least PR wise, or I guess last year or top 17. Brian and I finished 17 last year.
Right. It was right on the edge, but you didn't even have a
Yeah,
chance to compete for higher than that. So
yeah,
like.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean we were feeling good about our spot, but just a few tournaments, a few teams came and had those good tournaments that got them a few more points than we did. But yeah, obviously want to keep doing bigger and better, and it keeps pushing me as like an athlete. And I think that challenge is really exciting. And especially like seeing how much these Texas guys are getting better and playing. It's like it's such a bummer that like I had to move out of Texas as these guys are like exploding.
Right.
And I told Savannah the other day, I was like, it's kind of like I feel like I'm having to like watch my kids grow up while I'm away because we've helped develop that system and played them so much, and especially going to the tournament running and not being able to play. It's like, man, like I want to play with these guys, and as they're developing their reverse cuts and their cuts are getting so nasty and they're hitting everything harder and harder. I want to play with them, and for me, I just have to. Well, it's part of me wants to be like I've been around for so long, so I know what I'm doing, but it's also part of me is like, hey, like what can I learn from these young guys as they develop? They're developing in a different sport than I was developing in almost.
Right.
So a lot to learn in that. I know you've kind of experienced that as well, where we've both been playing for a while. So it's like, hey, I have to learn to adapt my game from these younger guys and certain skills that I didn't form while I started playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, one, just to backtrack, like I'm really glad to hear that you are like still gunning to be ultra competitive, because I think that like my fear with some of these things is like, I want to applaud all the people that are like starting businesses out of this, but especially the old guns that are, starting to, make some moves on the business end of
Yeah,
the sport now. Like the temptation to stop competing is going to get, like larger and larger, and like I say that about
for sure.
myself as well. And so
Yeah,
I'm glad that you also have that idea, and what you said about specifically like learning from younger players. Like I think it's so true. I think younger players like undervalue a lot of what like old school players do, because they're like, no, the sport I grew up in, like you're just nasty, and like if you're not nasty you suck. And like if that were true, like people like you, me, Skylar, that like aren't doing like the most disgusting things in the world, just like
yeah,
wouldn't be as successful as we are. And so
yeah,
I think there's like some learning both ways, and that's why like I was excited when Fred and I were going to start the season together next year, or last year.
yeah.
This year, God, what year is it? Um,
Time is all the same now.
it it really is. I have no idea when we're coming back. I have no idea when we actually ended. But yeah, like I was excited because I was just like, especially the way that like he looks at the game, and the way that he thinks about things. Like it's super unique, and it's just from a completely different point of view of like coming up in a sport that had a lot more possibilities than like when we started. Like a year into our careers, like we knew, you know, very little in comparison to like what he did, and he got to like watch a bunch of like top players play the game like this and start emulating that a lot faster. And so then his ideas developed from that point, as opposed to like it was so funny. The other day I found an old binder from my days when I played with Zagone as Origin
Hmm.
Unleashed, and there were diagrams on how we were thinking about playing defense, and they were just like the dumbest idea of all time. Like in like you, if you tried to play defense like this right now, it was a horrible idea. Like it literally leaves half the net open. I don't know why we ever thought this was a good idea, but like we had some thought to it then,
Yeah,
and now all of that knowledge is just like not really useful. Um,
that's hilarious.
yeah, but like yeah, I think there's so much to learn from those new people that are looking at the game differently. I think they need to kind of like come to value a little bit more of the like consistency and like the like less glamorous ends of the skill spectrum. But like, I'm learning my cut serve from kids that started playing 4 years after me. Like I'm asking everyone for tips. Like uh there's definitely no like pride thing of like, oh, well, you haven't
Yeah,
been around for very long. I'm like, well, you're just better at this than me, so like, you can teach me something, 100%.
exactly.
How is
Yeah,
like, how's all that development been going for you? I know like you actually like had a pretty good cut in
yeah,
2019, so but like, how's that all been, going for you? Is Texas
yeah.
teaching you some R cuts or anything crazy or what?
Honestly, like as far as my cut goes, like I was taking a lot out of Grant's book,
Hmm.
and able to like. I mean, I was feeling really good about just my serve and my lefty, um, coming into the 2020 season. Was really excited to develop those, and so, um, bummed not to get to put them into play in like the SRA Tour series, but like that's just like developing my cut even more and just working on my lefty even more and getting that down was something I was really excited about because I was starting to get a lot more consistency. My lefty was getting better, my lefty serve, and then just like my serves were coming off harder. And I think one thing I realized is just like I football was always my sport. I played football like growing up since third grade,
A,
so
a true Texan.
yeah, exactly. So like defense and movement and like reaction was where I was good, but I found just like in making contact with the ball, I don't have that swing. Like I'm used to
Hmm.
like like I'm gonna like attack someone, get their shoulder pads and just like push them. So it's like I'm muscling through.
Right.
I'm not so good at causing that like momentum swing of my arm like in baseball or tennis. And so that's one thing that I've really had to kind of learn from the young guys is just how to make that movement because I'm just it's so internalized to just muscle through everything. And that's not how you get speed on the ball. That's not how you get cut on the ball. And so really worked on trying to get that, and that helped with my cut. And I get some depth and kind of was starting to work on my flango again, and that was really working well with kind of my step out serve or my lefty. And so that's one thing that was good. I'm gonna have to work on just getting that again, getting consistency up, and I think it'll come. And I think sometimes I feel like man, like after a year, like things may be so gone. But then I mean, I watch like other sports like the NFL or like NBA, and like players are out a year, they come back and they're still dominant. And it's like it's like when you've been playing for a while, when you know the sport, like when you come back and grind, like you can get back into it and get back into that in that shape you want. And so like right now, like focus has really been on taser, and I haven't been training as much as I want or been able to play as much as I would desire, just because I
Right.
can't. Um, but yeah, like really was working on the serve before, and the reverse cut. I haven't had much success with it, but it's something that I'll want to add because it's like it's crazy. Well, like the Texas guys' reverse cuts have been some of the best I've seen, and there's like 4 or 5 of them that just
Easily.
have dirty reverse cuts, and just like watching them like they'll hit some like oh my gosh, that is crazy. So it's exciting with them getting better. There's more to learn from them and just more to um, see from them. So we want to try to use their skills to help us and help the sport as well. So
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like I I've been like dabbling with the reverse cut. I'm not putting like a lot of time into it right now because I'm still working on just like, all right, I need to like be ultra consistent with a cut.
yeah,
Like let's walk before we run here. Let's like build one skill at a time. And also like I don't want to focus on just like only serving because one I don't preach that, but it is interesting because I think like players like you and me like that's one thing that we like need to work on at this point. But all
yeah,
these like young guns that have serves, they're just like, well, let me work on serving even more. I'm like, no, stop. Like, learn how to set. Like,
exactly.
learn how to rotate on defense. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, there's I'm definitely having trouble with the reverse cut, and I'm so interested to see what it looks like once I'm actually like up against it, because no one in Chicago has one. So, when I go to practices here, like, no one's doing it, or they're trying to do it, but it's really, really bad. So it's basically a free ball. Um, but to me, like, it doesn't seem like it's that like earth shattering. Do you think it's earth shattering to you, or no?
I need to play with it more. So I went to Dallas in April. So I say that I moved in January and then everything shut down. So you know what, like let's go home, see people. And I played a day where I was able to play with the Texas guys, and I everything had been shut down for a few months, so I hadn't had much serve return practice. And that's like I've been grinding pretty hard, but still, like you can grind on your own all you want, but you can only it's hard to keep up serve return. Like you have to be able to play games and play against people to get that. So
Mm-hmm.
and I like would always give Rahul a hard time because he started to have a reverse cut at the end of last year, but it was so slow. So like I'd be like, yeah, good job, Rahul. Like you hit a reverse cut, but like I had 2 years to go return it. So
Right.
I would talk trash to him all the time. And so like the first game, like I finally play pickup against him, he just hits like probably the nastiest reverse I all day. I'm like, okay, you know what, that's gotten better. And so I think as we play against it, we'll adjust to it better.
Right.
But there are some where like if they hit it right, it's just I have a hard time seeing how your body can just really adjust to it if it has the speed. Especially like take someone like Fred who hits the ball so hard. If he can hit the right reverse cut, like you can't possibly be in position to get his cut and his reverse cut if he just hits it right. So I don't necessarily see that being like 100% time people can do that, but there are some reverse cuts that they just happen and like you're frozen in your tracks, and like you feel stupider getting aced by a reverse cut than you do by a normal cut. Like
Oh, for sure.
between both of them, when I get hit by a reverse cut, it's like I just feel stupid. So
Well, it's like
um
it's like getting your ankles broken in basketball. Like you
yep,
feel like an idiot. You're like, "Dang it,
yeah,
my body just didn't I couldn't do the thing." Like that's
yeah,
that sucks.
yep. I will say like so because a lot of the Texas guys have them, and when I did play in Utah with Grant, and I didn't really play anyone because we didn't play Ryder, so I didn't really play anyone who had a reverse cut. So it was like such a nice change of pace to not even have to worry about that.
Right.
Unfortunately, my serve return was still trash there just because wasn't able to play as much, and
Right.
but it certainly was nice not having to worry about it. But knowing that like more and more people will develop one, I'll be interested to see. Like I have a hard time believing it will break the game. Like people will adjust, but being able to physically prepare for both, I think people may have to get a little bit more physical to do that. And like I think this is something I was talking to Brian about the other day. Is like in general, people in Roundnet aren't as athletic as other sports just because at this point you don't have to. You don't have to be like you don't have to
Right.
last long. You don't have to be able to be quick necessarily. You just got to be able to serve to have success at early. It doesn't give you long term like pro success, but in general, I think a little more athleticism will help people be able to return reverse cuts and normal cuts and just serves in general.
Yeah, well, and also like, as a sport ages and it attracts more people, it's going to have player bases that are better built for the sport. Like the NBA
Yep.
didn't look like the NBA now in 1940 or whenever it
Yeah,
started.
for
Like
sure.
the build of the people was very, very different, and we figured out like, oh, if you're super freaking tall and you also weigh 230 and you're agile, like, yeah, now you're LeBron James and it's scary. Like,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I think that that's part of it too, is that like I think people that are worried about that part where they're like, well, then people like me aren't able to play this sport. I'm like, well, right, but like, are you what the top of a big sport right now should look like? Like, no. And I can say the
No
same thing
way.
for me. Like, I couldn't even go play volleyball in college because I was too short, and like I'm 6'2". So like like that's just the reality of the situation, is that like sometimes that's just what it takes to be, successful when it comes at the top level. Now we can still have fun competing at other levels, and that's
For sure.
okay. Um, but yeah, I think that everyone could stand to like get a little bit more in shape and like start working on those things, especially. Like I do think those are difference makers for the teams that like do like have a really really good day. Like they tend to look more athletic than everyone else, like
Yep.
also on defense and especially like offensively. Like they're not just like going through the motions of like hitting something simple. Like they're really like putting something into it. So I think that's going to become more and more necessary as this comes along, and like we should demand that our sport requires something a little bit
Yeah.
more than that, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's one thing too. I think as the sport changes and as it gets away from serve ball, like obviously minus me getting older, that doesn't help. But like I think I've never had a problem like going through a whole tournament. Like my
Hmm.
body's always withheld, and I've always felt great. And I do think that gives me an advantage in like being able to grow with the sport, and especially as like I want more movement, I want more defense in the sport, like everyone does, and less serve ball. And so I think as it develops that way, whether that be naturally or a rule change, like I don't know, like I like my chances with that. So that's one thing I at least I want to stay competitive as long as I can. And
Yep.
I think ideally for me is there'd be some kind of change that makes it less serve ball and more defense. And so with that, like I feel a lot better about that. And so it's like for me, I just want to stay as competitive as possible and develop the skills I can to where if something does happen, then I'm able to compete and jump in that because I'm more suited for it. So that's somewhat where my head is at as well. If because I mean I don't think I'm going to be able to serve ball with the best of them, but I'm going to try my hardest to serve ball as best as I can until then.
Right. No, I get it, and that's where kind of I am too. Like I'm confident that the areas that I'm more successful in the sport will continue to be important. And so it's like, all right, I just need to figure out how to play this game a little bit better in the meta that it is now, but also like those skills won't go away like later as
Yep.
things evolve and change. And so like I think it's important to like not lose sight of that and not just be mad about rule changes because like they don't suit you now. Like things will continue to change, and that's okay. And I guess like
Yeah.
alluding to that change, like you also have a similar kind of scope when it comes to the scene as me, and like you've seen a lot of rule changes come and go. You've seen a lot of cultural changes come and go. Like even if our definition of a pocket hasn't changed recently, like how we call pockets like culturally has certainly like changed
Yep.
over time. So as someone that's kind of been through that right now, like what's kind of your thought process on what kind of improvements you might want to like explore in,
Yeah.
in our sport, since that's I guess what everyone's talking about these days.
Yeah. Only one post a week for that for everyone to discuss. But yeah, I think I mean one thing I really want to explore because I think the implications are really exciting. Is like I want to see 3v3 and explore like teams like that because I think and that's kind of like a newer one for me. I've played with it a little bit with different variations, but true 3v3 like I think it allows you to have different positions, different roles, different formations,
It
like
definitely
drawing out
does.
defense. You actually get to there's a lot more of like hey, this is what a defense is, and it feels a lot more like a team sport. You're drawing things out, you're planning, and like part of the issues with the game is like hitting is so good because two people can't cover the whole net. So like, what can you don't change the product, you don't change the rules, everything stays the same. Like maybe some minor rules, like I think two-person serve receive would make sense, but um, everything would more or less stay the same. But you would add one more body to kind of cover up those holes where someone's hitting, and so I think with that, I think it adds a lot of variability. It would increase rallies, and so that's something I'm wanting to try to get more testing on and seeing how it does it, especially as people learn to play at a higher level. That's something I want to see because I think it keeps the game the most same, but could add so much more and add so much more depth because, like it is now, you can't like you can talk all day like about defense, and there are certain defensive ideas and schemes, but they really make such a small difference in how you do it. Like as far as rallies go, because it's just a small percentage. But you have three people that had so much more depth to the game and the roles and what kind of players start to form into these positions and like these skill archetypes. They have careers over that, and so
Hmm.
that is one thing I really want to see. I'm also really interested in just like smaller net and seeing how that plays out, or even taller net. So For me, it's mostly like those two. I guess are more equipment changes, but as far as 3v3 goes, that would be a rule change. So those are things I'm definitely interested in seeing how they play out. I want to see more results behind.
Yeah, I think honestly like 3v3 while extreme like is honestly a better solution than most people give it credit for because it doesn't change a lot of the elements of the game and it doesn't nerf hitting, it just buffs
Yeah,
defense. And like that's the thing, like everyone says like we have to nerf hitting and I'm like but then you're going to make the sport like less like you're just gonna have fewer options and like when people
yeah,
have fewer options to me it becomes less exciting even if like
yep,
it can become unbalanced at times. Like we want someone to be able to like jump and dive over the net and hit some crazy shot. Like that's also a part of the game. The one thing with spikeball that I've always appreciated as a 2v2 sport is that like there really is nowhere to hide. Like if you like if someone on your team can't serve receive well, you're going to get exposed because like you have to face a serve. Like
yeah,
you have to do that. And like if someone's not picking up on defense, like they are not like that other person can't make up for that. So I I understand that that's also kind of the problem that people see is like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, okay, so unless everyone's playing like all out at 100%, like there is no more like making up for that or like you can't make up that ground. But the I I I've always appreciated that like you have to be good at everything. And as soon as like you get to a point where if this third person's going to be the equivalent of like a rover, like we've played in like 3v3, like they're basically going to be the defensive guy that's like running down the long ball and like trying to keep it alive. They get to focus so much on none of the other skills of the game where like now they
yeah,
don't really have to set unless it's like an emergency or like they almost never have to hit. And
yeah.
so I I and I understand that exists in other sports. Like in volleyball, like you have a libero who like is literally a back row player. They only are passing for the most part. They actually can't even attack above the net. It's like a whole thing. So like
Yeah.
I understand that exists in other places, but I like that specialization the more people are on a team. Like in football,
Yeah.
it's cool that there's that level of specialization because you got 11
Like
guys out there. Like,
literally everyone is specialized in what they do.
right. But as soon as you start getting down to like one, like one, you obviously have to have like a one person sport. Like you would have to be good at everything because there's no
Yeah.
one else to lean on. With a two-person sport, there's not a lot of places to hide, especially if you have to alternate contacts. Like
Yeah.
that means if someone touches the ball defensively, the other person has to set it. Like, and that so that I think is like a thing. As soon as you start getting to three though, like with three contacts, you can start avoiding getting good at other parts of the game. And I don't know that I'm like ready to give that up quite yet. I
Yeah.
value that you have to be competent at everything.
I get that. And I think so like obviously there would be somewhat of a rover position. And for me, like that's the kind of position that sounds so fun. Like a position solely dedicated, like running down, playing those deep balls and getting that. But I think with it too, like they still have to have those skills because I don't think it's feasible for a player just to stay on the outside and never come in. Like I think a player would have to come in and they'd have to. So they would still have to have those skills to a certain degree. They probably wouldn't be as dedicated as a hitter. Like there'd probably be an inside player, an outside player. It's like the inside player would have some outside, the outside player would have some inside, and then probably some middle tier that would kind of have to work with both. And so I think you'd still have to have those skills. Granted, you wouldn't have to be as solid with them as if there were only two. Um, but I still think it adds a lot of dynamic. And for me, just like having those positions is exciting because then you like there are like player archetypes and it's like hey like this player is like this, but as the sport's kind of developing, we're kind of developing out of those roles. And I know we were kind of talking about that, but it's kind of like everyone's kind of developing the same role because you see the success there. Like we're not seeing more players like Ryan Fitzgerald develop. It's like he's more or less kind of on his own, and everyone's kind of more so developing into just um, serves. So I think that just for me, like that archetype, the role development in the 3v3, I think sounds super exciting. And I remember one time we played and Fred brought up the idea is like, hey, like someone's hitting, you have double body around the net, and then you have that third person who can just react wherever that ball goes. And like that's like, okay, that's a pretty cool defensive strategy. And there can be so many different defensive strategies like that. For me, the depth and the potential, like the rally potential that comes from 3v3, um, outweighs the like, okay, everyone doesn't have to be specialized as much, but I think they still have to be. And I think you would find the highest players would still, all three would be specialized in all those skills at the highest level.
Interesting, because I really feel like it would pretty quickly devolve into the idea of you'd have a blocker hitter, a setter, and then a defensive specialist. And basically, the only time that, like, basically a defensive specialist would never come in to hit. The only thing they would ever do is, like, if the setter was the one that made the first contact, ideally they would have the second ball to set the hitter. And the hitter
Yeah.
blocker really just becomes a hitter blocker unless it's like a scramble situation. And like those are the things that exist in volleyball. Like if you're an outside hitter, you block and you hit and you have one little spot on the court to play defense. And that's about it. Like um so it's not that these things don't exist, but like I feel like based on my knowledge of at least volleyball, like it just seems
Yeah.
so ideal that like and of course like we'd have to let meta develop. Like you like I mean like you
Yep.
said, you can create, you know, the idea of, you know, a double blocking strategy. I'd argue that like my opinion on body blocks is that they're like relatively not cool.
I
Um,
agree.
and I think that they're only cool when you only have two people to then still get it back to the net because that first one's going to ricochet and like you have to figure out how to do it. But once you start having like 3 4 people to start doing it, like the more people you have, like you're just kind of like praying and keeping the ball alive, and I think that's
Yeah.
like less entertaining.
Yeah.
So I do worry about that, but honestly, like I think that's better than putting in all these new things like a 1 foot circle or
Yeah.
whatever people are talking about. I'm like I really don't like a lot of the proposed rule changes. So like
Yeah.
and even just
And
like
I,
having 3v3 as like a separate type of event would be a cool way to just kind of like do that. Like volleyball has, you know, for like 4v4 grass tournaments. That doesn't change, you know, indoor volleyball or Olympic volleyball or professional beach volleyball. Like maybe that's just a system that you could run, you know?
yeah, so we did test at some point. So we call it 3v3 rover. So like the rope, except the rover position was had to stay out of 6 feet. So like it was
Oh, okay.
basically a purely defensive position. They weren't allowed to come in, and we found that that wasn't as effective. That like that third person needed to come inside. They needed to be able to hit. They needed to be able to set around the net. And so because
Interesting.
that was kind of my idea. Like, okay, hey, we could have a position that was solely dedicated to be outside. And the more we played it, like, actually, this guy, we need him to come inside a lot more. And so that's kind of where I've kind of been like, okay, I think true 3v3 could really add a lot. And that's where I feel like they would still have those skills. And this person might be still mostly dedicated outside, but they would still need to come in and hit because obviously volleyball, I guess if you're playing sixes, you have a lot more people, so you can have those dedicated positions where that's all I do. But three, I still think they'd have those positions. And that's something like I actually talked to Brian about. Like we could like do like a 3v3 like series. So it'd like 4 tournaments and like a threes nationals. And so
Mhm.
have to be a little more expensive per team. Maybe like 120 a team, but something like that could possibly run like a five tournament like a national series. That would kind of be cool to test it out and just see how threes goes and just see if the sport could develop that way. So those are the kinds of things my mind turns around like, okay, like what could we do to like kind of develop it and make some money off of it and like put a business around it. So I definitely want to see a lot more threes tested, and I'm happy for it to be wrong or it not help, but I really
Right.
think there's a lot of potential there and I think it could be the future.
Yeah, I also think that like even if it's not like a replacement for 2v2, like I think it's a good idea in general, and I think it would
Yeah.
add a like a different element to the game, and it might just be a different variation of round net where it's threes instead of twos. Like the fact that like beach volleyball has some of a lot of the same problems that we're talking about, where like if you're in system, a hitter has a massive advantage. Like as long as they're like clear with like as long as they have a good approach to the net, like the blocker can take so much away, the other person is taking what they can of the rest of it, but usually there's always a way around it. And
Yeah.
so really that game, I think a lot. I think about the parallels between our sports a lot, because so much of it is forcing the other team into a less than ideal scenario so that you can play defense better. And I think that's what we're seeing, especially, and why people are looking at crazy serves, is like, I just have to force you into some sort of bad touch situation so that I can read this set so that we can play defense a little more clear. And now people are getting those touches. And before they
Yeah.
weren't, like in 2016 when people had bad touches, if someone made a good recovery set, they were like they didn't touch it. Like people just didn't rotate fast enough. Like unless people hit at them, no one really got defensive touches unless they were errors in hitting, like massive
Yeah.
lip ups and stuff. And or at least that's my analysis of it. Like I was talking to Jack the other day. I'm sure you know that like David Luiz has been trying to put together like a rule
Yeah.
change exploratory committee. Basically, I don't know
Yep.
exactly what he's calling it. I actually have a call with him later today because I wanted to talk to him a little bit about some of my ideas for like structuring that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
but
awesome.
but oh, where's I going with this? Yes, I talked to Jack, and he was saying that like everyone remembers, you know, 2015 as like the year of rallies, and the truth of the matter is the percentage wasn't even all that much higher. Like it was still 1-2-3 ball. The thing was that like we just didn't have serves, and so like in 2015, like Sean Boyer was voted the best server in the country, literally because he just didn't miss. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it was like Dylan, and then I think I took third. And so like I was the like only guy who was like going for aces on serves. Everyone else was just like put it on, don't make it like literally a free ball, but like it, it because that element wasn't there, like it was only rallies that ever got highlighted. Because if you were creating a
Yeah.
highlight video, you weren't creating an ace reel. Like
Yep.
and I look back at some of the like footage that I put together of like Zagone and I's highlights, and like mine had some like ace highlights in there, like when I would get them, but everyone else's reels didn't have serving highlights because you weren't you weren't beating anybody with a serve,
Yeah.
or if you were, it was mostly because they screwed up. And so now we actually have a more dynamic interaction where like serve receive is now like a much more difficult skill than it was
Yeah.
before. And I guess the argument is that like it's run a little bit more rampant. But I think Jack was saying that like the like he took stats on like some of the like better games from 2015 Nationals, like even like rookie Strange Embrace, and he was like the rally percentage in that game was like 15. So like
Yeah.
there wasn't some year where like oh my god at like 33% of the time we were rallying. That never existed, and like it's in people's minds because they remember the rallies, but
Yeah.
they weren't that common. And so the fact that we have a like 7 or 8% rally percentage right now, like, is somewhat concerning, but it's really not even that different. Like in the grand scheme of things, I get that it's twice or it's half as much, but on the other hand, like it's the difference between 3 and 6, and I think a
Yeah.
lot. And so like I guess my question to people and I guess to you is like if we got back to 6, would everyone be happy?
No, yeah, and I think I was literally talking to Brian about this last week or 2 weeks ago, where it's like, yeah, that same thing. People look back like, oh, rallies used to be so much. Like, no, rallies have never been so much. It's not like the game is deteriorating. It's like it's changing in how people approach it. People are finding where you can get the most success. Like people go for aces now because that's what you can do. But it's like it never really was like that many rallies. It's always been like one, two, three. Um, and so like yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Where it's like, well, it's not like we're not looking at the game like, oh, it's declining, it's deteriorating. No, the game is still the same. It's just how people do it's different in a few ways. And because hitting's so strong, like people go for serves, and it's really you most of the time you're not having rallies because of good defensive play. You're having rallies because you're trying to force an error. And
Right.
so it's like we more so want rallies because of defensive play. We don't want to have to force errors to get rallies. And so it's I don't remember your original question, but yeah, like I kind of been in the same mindset where it's like, there wasn't ever a glory days in it.
Yeah, well, I guess like I think defining the end goal with these rule changes is
Yeah.
important. Like, what do you actually want to see? And
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
and so I ended with like, if we got back to 15%, like, do you think that solves it? Because I think that like everyone who complains on Facebook currently, who says like we
Yeah.
need to go back to 2015, like, all right, let's go back to 15% rallies. Are you going to be happy? The answer is no.
No, no. For me, I think 30 to 40% should be the rally. That's kind of in my mind.
Really?
Like I don't think you want every play to be a rally, but I think 30 to 40%, a game of what, like 66 points, 33 rallies in there, that's like I think that's a good amount. I think it allows them to still be like a little bit like that soccer where like when you have those exciting plays, that's where the excitement, but it's not like so little. I think 15% is too low, but I think 30 to 40% allows rallies to be in there and be exciting, but not be too many of rallies. And we want those rallies. We want those rallies to be fun to watch. I think if 70% or more is a rally, I think the rallies kind of lose their excitement a little bit. I don't think you can have that sustain like, oh, every play is exciting, but I think 30 to 40%, I think that's a good rally. And I guess I don't really have like I don't have a game in mind where it was 30 to 40% and like, okay, yeah, this was it. But in my mind, I think 30 to 40% would be a good amount for rallies to be exciting, but not too much in a game.
Interesting. See, I think that like I think 30 is too high. Like, I think aiming for like 15 to 20 is a pretty good answer. Like, in general, like, our sport just isn't a back and forth sport. It's a rally sport. So like, points are supposed to end. And especially when you play a game that's a side out rally sport, like, you want the idea of like a defensive get to be more impressive. And when like, so if the idea is that like, if I put the ball on the net, I have a 33% chance of losing the point. Like, I think that's too high of a swing in order to make defense like more possible. Now, or more like exciting. And so I think what we want to do is actually make defense more possible. I think we want to up the amount of possible conversions on defense. But technically, like, by definition of a rally, like, it's not a rally until the returning team also, or the serving team plays
Puts it
defense
on.
and puts it on the
Yeah.
net.
Right.
So like,
Right.
I don't think we actually want that. I think we want more opportunities defensively, but we also don't want those to be like easy all of a sudden, because if you have a 33% chance of winning the point by just putting the ball on the net, that's it it's going to make serving so much less dynamic that like you're just going to do a boring serve to start off a point, and then things just get too routine. Like, does that make sense? I think I'm not doing a great job of explaining this.
Yeah, no, no. So for me, I think just because there's a 33% rally chance, I don't think that's necessarily a 33% break. So it's like I don't think it would be there's a 33% chance like the other team would get the break, or I guess 33% chance you get the break, I guess is what it would be. More so just 30. Ideally, it's 33% chance that like there will be a rally, and some of those rallies will be longer. So like the break percentage would be lower because not all of those rallies would be. And I think it would be like a smaller percentage that would be longer rallies, some would be shorter. But yeah, again, like 15 to 20% to me, it still feels like that's too much. Like 1, 2, 3, too much ace. Like I think, and one just from playing it, the running and the rallies, that's the most fun part. So I think the more you can have that, one, it increases athleticism. That's a lot more running around. You have to be a lot more of an athlete to play. Like you have to have stamina. Um, like you can't get tired because there is a lot more of that
Right.
with 33 to that 30 to 40% that I'm talking about.
For
So it
sure.
adds that, and like there's a lot more opportunity of those longer rallies that are so exciting. And yeah, some of them will be shorter, but I don't think all of them would be breaks necessarily. So it wouldn't necessarily be 33% chance of a break. It'd be smaller than that, but 33% of a rally, I feel like is a lot more. And I don't necessarily know what it is in um, what it is in volleyball. But
Yeah,
yeah,
those
I
tend to
don't know if
be
you know.
like very very different for very different teams. So that's
Yeah,
like it's tougher to look at that. We see more parity in terms of side out percentage at like the top of our sport than at least in beach volleyball. I don't think comparing it to indoor is the same thing because also like in indoor the way that they calculate hitting percentages is just different. Like
mm,
because that the block doesn't count as a contact, like
got it.
there become these like scramble plays. So if you hit something off the top of somebody's hands and then someone has like a really tough legitimate play on the ball, like it doesn't count as a kill, like it counts as an error, but like you still forced that, so it's like a forced error. Like so like hitting
Got it.
percentages in volleyball are like usually sub 500, like good hitters are hitting like in the fours.
Got it.
Um, but it's kind of different because if you look at like if you included force errors, it'd be well over 500. So like
Hmm.
those are tough when you look at them.
Yeah.
Um,
And so I think too, like, so I think of, and this is all purely like based off feeling, but like when I watch volleyball, it seems like there are a lot of rallies. So there are some rallies like, oh, that's awesome, but it's less of a draw because I feel like there's just so many rallies. And even I
Now,
guess I
are you talking indoor and are you talking men's or women's? Because those stats are
probably
very different.
probably indoor.
Yeah. And then are you
Probably indoor
talking men's
because
or women's?
probably I mean probably women's because I probably watched a lot more women's volleyball than I have men's.
Mm-hmm.
But because I will say like 2-on-2 sand volleyball, like I enjoy watching that. And maybe I think maybe because it feels a lot more dynamic to me. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's why like if it's the 33 to 40%, that's like if you're watching it every third play, there's a chance there's a rally, and so I feel like with Roundnet, with every third play being a rally, that's pretty exciting to watch. Where it's like yeah, you may go 6 plays without a rally, and then you'll have what 3 plays with the rally, or you watch a rally and then 2 go without. That's a good amount, like a good pace to where it's like oh this is fun to watch, but it's not like every single play I'm keeping up with it to where it loses its value.
Yeah, I think I'd be more on board with you if instead of saying like a 33% rally chance, I lowered it a little bit to like a 33% like legitimate defensive possibility. Like
Yeah,
where we include those where like it's a hard driven ball at somebody and like they're in a good spot but they like just don't get a good touch on it or they like barely miss it or something like that. I think that adds to the like excitement of it of there being more of a possibility because I think a lot of people are hitting into open space right now. And so people
yeah,
are like, "Oh, that there wasn't that like that anticipation of like he could possibly get that up." Um just because like especially like if it's gonna be 33% rally, like I don't know about you, but at least in my experience defensively, like I'm a lot better, and this is my experience in volleyball as well. Like my defense, and I think a lot of people's defense is a lot better when you start off like right after the serve, because like less scramble has taken place. Like you are starting in known positions and going and implementing something, versus like as soon as like defense starts after someone has dug you on like in round net, like you're now starting to play defense like from a position like having finished your swing. Like it's almost tough to get into any sort of valuable position from there, at least comparatively. And so I think if the rally percentages are 33%, then like now when the defense gets a break, like they're in such a better position to not or to kill the ball from that point and not allow the rally to like continue onward. Does that make sense?
yeah. So I guess from there, it partly depends because it's almost as if off the serve, that's when the returning team almost has the most control. And obviously, it depends on like the rally return, but like off the serve, I feel it's almost like when obviously off the serve, there's the rallies are fewer.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like off the serve, they have the most control, so it's harder to be in that defensive position. But a lot of times when rallies start to take place, um, the hitting team also is out of position because they're trying to scramble to get that defensive touch, and they're not able to control the ball exactly as they want. So at times it's easier for the defense to respond because the offense has less control. They don't have control to put the ball where they want. It certainly depends on the rally,
Right.
and the how the return takes place. Um, but if you're able to reduce the control that the hitting team has, it's easier. It gives the defense more opportunity to be in play. So it's like finding that fine line of how can we give the offense less control to where they don't know where to put or like they can't put away the ball as easily, but not too much control to where they're putting it away, or too few control where it's like it's not even fun to watch the defensive get because it's so easy. So
Right. I see your point there, and I think that's why specifically I'm talking about defensive opportunity instead
yeah,
of that, because if we go to rally, like that assumes that the serving team has successfully defended and gotten the ball back on the net. And my
that's
argument is
fair.
like usually at that point that's where it ends. Like the majority of
Yeah,
rallies will end right there. And so if our goal is to only get to that, like we actually don't want that percentage to be too high, or we want the percentage of their side out off of that possession to be lower than it currently is.
yeah,
And so that that becomes like a question in and of itself. It's so interesting to talk about the dynamics of this because there's just so many things to actually consider, and I, at least the one thing that I like about like what you're talking about here is like we're not limiting anyone's opportunities so far. It's literally just trying to like create more opportunities
yeah,
within a rule set. Like there's just more opportunities to get a ball up if there are three people. Like
yeah,
so that I honestly think is a better answer than like, all right, you like you can't hit into this quadrant off of the serve receive, or you can't have your foot like under the net. That's one thing that like more than the 1 foot line. Um, I think not being allowed to put your foot under the net at all would be much better. I think it's an enforcement nightmare, but I also think the 1 foot line's an enforcement nightmare as well.
yeah.
But like not being able to do that and just have to have your body off net would change things for sure. It'd become a lot more difficult to hit backwards. Like I don't know about you, but anytime I wrap,
That's
my
true.
foot's under the net. Like
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah. It gives you less control. I mean, I don't love the 1 foot rule, and honestly, I think I watched Preston's video and I watched it's like, well, this kind of looks just the same. It doesn't look like there's that many rallies. It looks like you're hitting a little bit farther off the net and people still aren't getting to the ball. So like I can't imagine like foot not being. I think, and they both would limit it. Like obviously the 1 foot does limit some. Foot not under would limit some, but again, like enforcement nightmare, like you said, like there's already so much debate on like, oh, this, that, and like enforcing things that are difficult to enforce, enforcing that within play is even more difficult. So it certainly would affect it. I don't think it would have that much effect on change. It didn't seem like the 1 foot barrier had that much effect on change. And like, I think you can agree with me that like hitting the ball hard is one of the more fun parts of this sport. And so that's
Correct.
one thing that I want to make sure has the integrity. So it's like, how can we just create more opportunities off hitting the ball hard? And honestly, the creative hitting is fun too. And so like the 1 foot takes a little bit of that creative hitting. Like some of the flicks are like such cool shots to watch. And so how can we keep all that and improve rallies? And so I think that's why I continually end up going back to like, oh, let's just add a person. I think that could keep everything. And it's not hard to teach people this rule change. It's not hard for people to follow along because all the rules stay the same. So if you're familiar, you get it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. You just have another person. And so
Right.
I think that's why I tend to trend back to 3 person, and I need to test it more before I can full on support it. But that is kind of where I'm advocating these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like I think there's a couple of different parts of this like rule change thing that I think people are missing because I think everyone wants the big one, but we also like I think if the bigger the rule change, the more we have to test it and make sure it's like actually worth pursuing. Because undoing that is going to be a nightmare. So like
Yeah,
we need to make sure that it's a really good idea up front, which just means it's going to take time to test. And realistically, it means that like none of those can happen by 2021. in my opinion anyway. I
Yeah,
don't think that's the
for sure.
official I don't think that's the official position of Spikeball or even the board, but like I think like proving a 1 foot circle is one thing, and then you also have to like to implement that and give people enough time to learn what to do with it before we start a season about it, like which seems
Mhm.
reasonable to me. Like it's impossible to implement that quickly, in my opinion. So like I think part of it is like what can we do right now, and I think that especially in going back over the rules over the last 2 weeks of this conversation, I've really realized that like our rules are not very like specific or like well like detailedly written. Like there's like if you brought a lawyer in to like be nitpicky about like definitions of things, they'd be like, what does this even mean? Like and
Yeah.
I think even just like spending some time like clarifying where we actually are right now would be helpful, and then making some like smaller ish rule changes that don't play around the set itself, but only play around the implementation of rules is a different thing, because I think those can just happen faster. Like we didn't have to do a whole lot of testing when we went to like sloppy first touch, you know. So
Yeah.
like, what are there any opportunities that you see like that are more similar to that, where like it's not the big change that everyone's talking about, but like would be beneficial long term as well, but also like could just move things forward for now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some of the first, I think one thing I've been thinking about a lot is like people talk about like serving's not the problem. The problem is hitting, and even deeper than that, the problem's not hitting the ball. Is the problem is the control over the ball makes it so easy to hit. And so it's like, what are simple things we can do to just make control on that first series or that first touch a little harder? And um, I think just like finding a way for the returning team to like be deeper, or like have a more make it more difficult for the returning team to get the ball back to the net. Obviously, that would change serving a little bit, but serving team being or the receiving team being deeper, and then they have to have a lot longer, a lot higher touches to get back to the net. I think that's something that
Yeah.
could kind of add something. So I really tried to think about like controls, like how can we change control so that like they're not hitting with as much control, so that way they can hit how they want but they don't have the control. So that's kind of like a simple rule I've kind of thought of, and again I haven't tested it, but somehow affecting the control of that first touch for the receiving team.
Yeah, I think that's like people's answer right now is like serve crazier, like and force that bad touch. So I guess like in your way, like because that's the thing, like if we make it more difficult for that first touch to go well, but we don't change anything with serving, then you really just expounded the serving problem too. So that's
Yeah.
what's tough. Like,
Yeah, so I guess, and then again, this is still like a workshopped idea, but
of course,
it would be somehow obviously the returners would be the returners would be deeper. So I don't know to know how far. I'll just say 20 25 feet for this example. And if the receiving
that's
team
far.
is going to be, it is far. So if the receiving team is going to be that deep, obviously you're not going to have serving like it is today. It may be a little different. Um, so maybe the serve is really just ripping the ball deep, and you're not ripping it side to side. You're just ripping the ball deep, and the returning team, and you could be right. Maybe you're just like hitting. You're next to the net. You're tossing. You're hitting it. You're ripping it deep. So then the returning team is having to either get butter sets or work with really long sets to get the ball back to the net. So they have less control, and then they hit it on, and so then the returning team, um, they have to deal with what they get, and so that's something I think could possibly be somewhat of like a simple rule change to do it. And I know like obviously that changes serving quite a bit,
Right. That changes a
but it
lot.
is yeah, but it is somewhat of like a, I don't know, simple thing, and I don't know. It's something again I want to test, but it's that control. How can we reduce that control? And again, yeah, that's what people are trying to do with serving. How can we reduce their control? But then people are adjusting. They're learning serve receive, or it's either you get a good handle or it's an ace. So it's like you're not necessarily getting control. You're either not giving them control or they're adjusting and getting more control. So
Right. Yeah, I definitely get that. I think you've identified something that's a good goal to try and get, which is like make it more difficult to like transition to the net out of serve receive, because like when it's 2 steps out of serve receive, that's very different than when it's more. So
Yeah.
I think that's a valid point. Have you ever tried the variation where um, serves are like it's 2-man serve receive, and like lips are playable and everything like that. Like there's no out of bounds. The ball just
I
has to go
yeah.
like forward. Obviously, it can't go backwards or anything. Have you ever like tried that?
I've played it some. I remember specifically in like I think it was December, November. I tested some. Um, I don't like. I think I did like it. I don't remember anything like outstanding from it. Like this is it. I think I did enjoy it, and I think um, that was a good. If that was an ad, I would not mind that at all. Like I would support it. Um, but if I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't jump out of my mind too much. I just remember playing it, so I guess that's a
Gotcha.
positive thing because I don't remember it being negative. So
That's so interesting because my experience with that was like inherently riddled with negativeness, because
really,
it basically devolved into exactly what you were describing, which is like launch the ball super far, and it basically just felt like, all right, we're just manufacturing rallies. Like it felt like a drill. Like it like
yeah,
of like, all right, let's work on this long ball. Like other teams out of system and they launch it really far. Like now return it from 20 feet. Like and
that makes sense.
so it basically became like one person getting some super far launch ball and the other person making sure that like they don't just like drop serve you, or the pocket doesn't go somewhere else. And it felt manufactured, and that's where like that's what's so tough, is that like as a goal here we're trying to end up with something that manufactures more rallies, but we don't want them to inherently feel manufactured either, you know? And so I think that's the balance that I'm trying to get with all these things, is like, I want rallies to be just as dynamic as they are now. I just want them to happen a little bit more. But every solution that I've seen so far, at least in my mind, it plays out of like, these are just less dynamic and we're just making it like too routine or too manufactured. And we're losing that like athleticism that is on display with these rallies, because
For
like
sure.
because it is so hard to return the ball to the net off a defense. Like it usually involves someone doing something really cool, aka everything Anchored ever does. Like, and that's what people
Yeah,
want. So if we make it too routine, then we're gonna lose that. You're gonna lose the people diving. You're gonna lose the like it's just gonna be too much control, you know.
agreed.
But you
We want
want
to,
but you want to give them some more control, but how much, you know?
yeah, we want them to be more frequent, well, but we don't want them to be too easy. Rallies are
Exactly.
no longer fun when they're too like they're not. If everyone's doing gentleman's serve and you're not allowed to put it away, like you have to hit it. That's not fun. Like you want people have to work for rallies, but how do you make it to where they have to work just enough to get it, but it's not too easy. It's a fine balance. It's tough to do, obviously.
Right. No, and that's I think people are losing that because they're just like, look, everyone agrees there needs to be more rallies. Just make a rule that creates more rallies. And it's like, well, no, we can't just like, the
Yeah,
goal isn't just to like get to a solution that only does this one thing. Like it also has to like improve the sport and like be good too. Also, one hot take that I've had that like I'm gonna create a post about this because I think it's really true. Like, did you what or did you see that Spikeball posted like the famous Lancaster rally with Elite and the rookies the other day?
yeah, yeah,
So they also posted it like a month ago. But the one a month ago was the footage from Jenna Coleman's gimbal as she was
hmm
moving around the net,
yeah.
and the most recent one was a still, and it was just like a camera on a tripod. I dare you to watch those back to back. It is insane, the difference. The rally doesn't even look cool on the still camera. It literally looks like everyone's playing bad. And
That
and
makes sense.
and that other moving camera like added so much more like dynamics to the game and invited you into
Yeah,
like how far someone goes off net, or the the amount that they rotated around the net, like the ground that they cover. And so I think that like as part of the like watchability argument, like even if we just got to like making especially the, stuff produced by Spikeball, like always be on a gimbal like that. Now, obviously, you got to pay someone to do it. Like, it's an
Yeah,
expense. I get it, but like that ramped up the excitement of everything tenfold. It's actually
completely,
crazy.
completely. Yes, like in college, I worked for like the A&M football team, and so part of what I would do is I would sit up in a big tower and I would film practice.
Right.
And so it's like it's the difference of watching that like practice footage, just like a still camera, and then like when I watch an NFL game, like the moving cameras, like that dynamic. It just nothing about the game is necessarily changing, but just the movement you feel part of it. It's so much different. Whereas like watching the game film, it's not exciting. Like you don't feel like you're in the game, but then watching that movement. So I get that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Like I think that's an element that people aren't focused in on either, and it's something that like I've been trying to solve too. Like I just posted today on uh, in the Facebook group and in my YouTube channel, like this idea of like miking up courts, and even that
Yeah,
does a lot to bring the viewer like into the game. And so I think when people say like this isn't very watchable right now, like I kind of agree. Like I watch film for the utility of it, of like, all right, well, like I need to watch what Coleman's doing right now so that like in a year when I play him, like I'm not blindsided. Like I have
yeah,
to do some analysis of that. But like part of me doesn't even enjoy watching it that much. But like how can you enjoy it when it's just like a camera on a tripod and no one knowing what the score is and everyone in chat going like, "Huh, what's that? Oh, I was that is this a second serve, or is it extra points, or is it
yep,
over? Is this for the win?" Like it's it kind of takes you out of it. And so
yeah,
I think part of that like watchability factor, I think everyone says like, well, as soon as we have more rallies, we'll just have more viewers. And I'm like, that's literally not true. Like like half it's marketing, like you're saying,
yeah,
with, tasers, it's like bringing eyes in to actually watch it. But I think that's a frontier of making the game more exciting too, that like, and does a lot more than people think. Like that summer spike footage is so much more watchable
oh
than
for sure.
than the the tournaments that Spikeball streams, or when I set up my phone and it goes over to Twitch.
Yeah,
I mean, we gotta walk before we run, but like there are just so many ways to attack the problem of watchability, and
yeah,
I think that's one thing. So yeah, my challenge to everyone right now: go watch the rally, not on a gimbal, and it's literally not exciting.
yeah,
It's wild.
yeah. Yeah, actually, I watched the video on the that audio product you posted. It seems pretty cool. We're gonna have to check it out and hit them up. So
Yeah, I
love
mean,
I loved what it did.
yeah, I'll throw in a little ad here as well, and I'll
Yeah, there
throw
you go.
a link down in the in the description. I've been playing with this microphone. It's called the Rode Wireless Go microphone, and it's a microphone and a wireless receiver, and basically you can throw the microphone under the net and then plug the receiver box into your phone, or a DSLR or anything, and then you have a wireless microphone, and it's good enough that it can pick up everything within 6 feet if you put it on the highest setting, and you can also like use it as like a lavalier mic. So like I've mic'd myself up at a couple of practices. I throw it on a lower setting, and then you can only hear what I'm saying for the most part, and like a little bit of what everyone else is saying. But it's cool because it invites you in, and you can hear you can hear rims, you can hear pockets, and you can hear what people are talking about around the court, including when someone says the score at the beginning of every single point. So there's no more like, what's the score? It's like someone's gonna say it right now, like, and you just listen and you can actually hear it. Um,
Yeah,
so I think even that is just huge, and I think especially like at this point, like I think that anyone who's like like recording games and taking it somewhat seriously, like should look into it. But especially people that are streaming tournaments, like Utah Roundnet, like the Michigan guys, like this is I like it really does just change the game, and like I think it's the future, and just an immediate upgrade that like automatically makes the quality
for
better, and
sure.
we should be pushing towards that. Like we like 4 years ago it was GoPros in a fisheye lens from like 90 feet off, and now we've gotten better, and now our phone cameras are really good, but even that's like a little flat, but it's at least like meeting you where you are
Yeah,
technologically. I think the next frontier in video is the gimbal, and that
Yeah,
requires someone to actually be running around. So that's,
yeah,
but I'm playing with a couple of things, but I think
yeah,
that's super cool. So you guys should look into it because if you
yeah,
guys are miking up courts and players,
yeah.
that'd be fun.
It adds, yeah.
I would pay to hear Fred mic'd up through a tournament. That'd be hype.
For sure. And it's such a simple solution as well. So it's like if someone's not able to get like a scoreboard and a stream going, just at the very least having the audio to where people can hear adds a
Right.
lot. And well, I actually discovered the other day that OBS actually has a mobile app to where you can stream via OBS on the iPhone, and so like you can add overlays. So like so like we have a scoreboard that we kind of set up through this. It's a free app online. We set up a scoreboard. We could literally add that scoreboard onto OBS, so someone could stream from their phone. It would
Hmm.
go from OBS to Twitch, and then someone else could like keep the score on their phone that's not even there. So like something like that's such a simple solution. Add that with that, like there's a lot of simple solutions to start streaming and getting that stuff going that I think people don't realize. But the OBS on the phone, we haven't actually put it into test yet. We've been using just our computers whenever we're doing it. But that's a cool little solution to try out. They can add like a scoreboard super easily and still stream from your phone.
Yeah, let me know how that goes because I've been
Yeah,
playing with the Streamlabs uh, OBS app. That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I
That's
use. Oh, is that what
yeah. I
you're
think
using here?
yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
So every time
OBS
I
Streamlabs.
so every time I do it, my connection isn't good enough, and like the overlays like add so much data to it. Like I try to throw
Mm,
like chat on over it, or even just like
yeah,
alerts, and
yeah.
the quality drops significantly to the point that it's like unwatchable frame rate wise. So if
Makes
you
sense.
find out anything good with that, let me know. And
Yeah,
but I also heard that like the Streamlabs app is way better on Android and not on iOS,
interesting.
which makes
Yeah,
sense. But yeah, I tried that and I had to ditch it and just stream straight to Twitch. But then, like you said, like you can't throw any overlays in, so you can't throw a scoreboard in,
yeah,
which is where like yeah, just throw a microphone down where like everyone can hear it. Because like right now, even if you're 25 feet off the net and commentating behind a phone, like those people don't know what the score is. So like it's just so much easier to like just actually hear what's going on. So I think that's a future solution for sure. Like I think we need to attack the watchability of our sport from a lot of different angles, and like
for sure.
anyone that says that like this is the answer, it's this and nothing else, like
Yeah.
that they're wrong is the answer. I don't know what else to say. Like there's got to be some incremental things that all add up on top of each other to make this
For
better.
sure. It's complex. Building a sport from the ground up is not an easy task, and that's why it's not
Right.
done a whole lot. So it's very complex.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Like, I come from the Smash community as well, and I joined pretty late in that tenure. But like, that sport, like, was just run out of people's houses for 10 years, and then
Yeah,
died, and then got a brief stint in MLG, and then died, and then like now, like the community finally figured out a way to put it together, and now it's like crushing. But like
yeah,
yeah, it took 20 years. That game came out in 2001. Like, it took 20 years to get to the point that it is now. And, like, we're not that far into it. Like, we really only started having a competitive season in, what, 2014? So, like,
yeah. Hasn't been that long.
yeah, it really hasn't been that long. It's been 5 years because this year's scrapped because of COVID. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's been 5 years. And, like, what we've accomplished in 5 years is incredible. And, like, half of it is just like, yeah, we should continue to do better. But the fact that anyone, like, I think people think this about everything where they're just like, if I just had 10,000 followers, like everything would be different. Or like if I just could talk to, a million people on YouTube, like this would be different. And like it's just
yeah,
not true. Like you have to actually do a lot and it takes
yeah.
time.
And that's like even looping back to the beginning of all this is like that's why I think like organizations and businesses and like the RROs like to built to be a business around the sport. I think that is going to help it grow, and like it's people who will be able to jump in and work on those complexities, because I think people wanting to make money off the sport is good. It builds an economy around it. And the more people
Right.
you have wanting to build these businesses and like thinking like, hey, how can I leverage this sport to make money? How can I leverage this to be an opportunity for me? I think it helps build the sport and it gets more people in. It gets people thinking critically and like in a structured way around building the sport. And I mean, and that's a lot of the reason we wanted to start TASR is like, okay, like if we build a structure, we build and we critically think about these and we think, okay, how can we make money off of this? And then how can we make money and then pour that money back into the roundnet economy, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that helps grow it. And so I think the more and more like businesses around it, like if you look at like obviously us growing in Texas, Taylor is thinking very much with a business mindset in Utah. And so the more people that start to do that, the more the sport's going to grow because people are going to be forced to face these complexities and problem solve and grow. And the business mindset will be around it. And I think that will really help it grow. And like the backyard tournaments are fun, but the more legit it gets, and then when people start getting events and they kind of see it, like, you know, like people go to Tough Mudder, people go to Spartan races, those things are very put together, very well run. A lot goes into it. And those are businesses and they're done. And I personally think like registration for a tournament is far, far devalued compared to what it should be. And I think I'm starting to realize that as we run
Correct.
events, like we're like, oh, I want to do this. Like I want to pay people to run it. I want to pay to have this of the quality of this, but what we charge doesn't necessarily allow us to do that. But it's kind of
Correct.
like there's this dilemma where people are like, I don't want to pay too much, that's too expensive, where it's like, well, but like we want it to grow in this way. It's like, well, man, like I can do a lot more for these events. Like I can pay people, I can pour into the roundnet economy if I can charge more. But then again, I don't want people not to come to our events because they're unwilling to. And it's like you look at local like city leagues, you look at things like Spartan Race where it's like 5Ks, like people are paying $100+ to run for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Or at 10Ks, and it's like that's what people are doing. I think it's going to grow to there, and we're at this point where it's like, okay, we kind of have to do that, and that's kind of why we somewhat developed a pricing model to where like those who are in our community, we can kind of give them discounts, and we can charge a bigger price to those people who are in our community just to try to get it there. But the more we develop our business, the more I realize, man, like we are so confined by what we're able to charge, by like what's kind of the social acceptance in this roundnet community, where it's like if we're able to charge more, man, there's so much more we can do and help grow. And so I think more of that, just that business mindset and that thinking of how to develop the sport from that aspect is gonna like that's only gonna help it grow and help us challenge and think through these complexities.
Right. Well, I was talking to Taylor about this in our podcast of like one, everyone needs to be charging more for tournaments, but then like you actually have to deliver some value there because like people can play in a
Yep.
$20 tournament, but the answer is that like you're barely going to be able to talk to the TO. The like you're going to have to do a lot of the work on your own. You're going to get no food, you're going to get no water, you're going to get none of this stuff. And it's going to be, you know, like tournaments were in 2014 where it's just a group of people that are committed to something in a field. And like you can charge more if you actually like create an event around it. And so
Yep.
that's the idea. And the event makes it more welcoming too for people of all skill levels because those lower skill people that have no chance of winning can actually like have fun while they're not doing it, which is why I've always said like part of the thing of why I want Spikeball to charge more for their tournaments is it would encourage people to stick around for the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
it's like, hey, you know, your tournament entry fee is $60, but for, you know, $80 you can have like a spectator pass, or for $100 like you know, like your team has like spectator passes or something like that, just to like tell people that like, yeah, like you stick around and you watch this. Like I think that's a part of it too. But then you also have to build the structure for them to like actually be able to watch it. Like right now, like sitting on the ground is not like super great either. So you kind of have to build like a, you know, at least a feature court to like push people towards that. But like moving towards running events and getting out of this like backyard mindset that like served us well in 2014 when we were just trying to get the number of teams up from 15 to 25.
Yeah.
Like that's all cool or whatever, but like we're just at a different level and we need to start playing like we're there because we are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that'll help at a lot more official events, and then people can still have the backyard tournaments and those smaller ones, and I think that's important. Like a lot of the high school clubs around here, like we still want them to hold events. We want colleges to hold events, and like those can be smaller, cheaper, and we want those. But then we want ours to be like, hey, this is the big event. Like this is the cool, like the major series. Like those are going to be such high quality events with a lot of cool stuff and a lot of fun opportunities, and these top teams and streaming and all kinds of stuff. So we're that's ultimately what we want to see, and just figuring out how to do that and the right approach, like saying like, hey, like we want to charge a little bit more. Like we want to be able to do stuff, and so that's kind of a conversation we're kind of always having to figure out how to do it. And you know, we don't want people to come across as like, oh yeah, we're greedy and we want all this money. It's like, no, we want to build the sport. That's what we're in this for.
You greedy man that runs all these tournaments and takes no money for
Yeah.
himself. You greedy individual, you.
What a jerk.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it does get like that. Like I've had people in Origin say that we have dues so that like I profit off of it, and I'm like I lose money. I lost money every single year. Like
Yeah.
like doing it for sure. I put like some of my own into it, and I like the way Origin did it. Like we refunded people who went to certain tournaments or paid out. Basically, like we'd say like, all right, we're gonna refund like $500 back to people. So if 10 people went, we just divided that 500 by 10 and gave everyone $50, and that would like offset their costs. And I took none of those for like 2 years, but everyone was like, you're just doing this to make money. I was like, I'm literally not. I promise you.
Yeah.
I'm not even taking the money that like I could take back. Like
Yeah.
literally not. So
And and there's also a sense that like it's bad to make a profit off running these. Like, like it's good to make a profit. Like people should be charging enough to make some money and reward themselves for putting in this work. And so it's like
so that they
obviously we're
keep
not.
doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's okay, and like I think it's a good thing for people to run these events and make a profit. And again, that business mindset of it. So like I think there's a little bit of this idea. It's like no, you should make your tournaments cheap. Don't make money off of it so that everyone can afford to play. And I was like, I don't think that helps accelerate the growth of the sport and
It
get it to the
doesn't. Yeah.
legitimacy we want as much as like, hey, let's run a good event. I'm going to make some money because it's not the most motivating to put a ton of work into something and then not see something that can benefit you from it.
Right.
And it's like, thankfully, right now, like for Brian and I, a lot of the benefit comes from like just the relationships and seeing the sport grow. But it may not be that way for everyone, and that's okay to host a tournament to make money. But again, like do it well. Like don't put out just like this horrible product and then just take it. I think make some money off of it and do it well. And I think that's what we should look to do. And there should be a little bit more championing of like, hey, let's make a profit off this, like make something of it. And I think that's a good thing.
God, yeah, it's just so true, and it's exciting to see that that's happening outside of the company, and like
For sure.
it's also cool because like it expands the potential because now we have more than one entity working on the growth of the sport, and now it's not
Yep.
just like tell your friends about it. It's also like all right, we're gonna start growing something that like will inspire people, like a bunch of more people to tell their friends about it, and you know move people
Exactly.
up the ladder of viewers. Well, I gotta tell you, we're gonna have you back on at some point because we're nearing 2 hours here, and I want to wrap it up, but I got to about half of what I wanted to ask you, so that's impressive. So we'll have to have a part two with Logan Cornelius at some point. But I do want to get to this. Especially if you're watching on YouTube, you've probably noticed that the two of us have some unruly beards here. Tell me the story of yours. I'm well on the record about mine, but you've really gone for it. And I think the other day you posted like a picture of like very clean cut you from 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and pretty wild man you from a couple of days ago, and I laughed out loud. So
Yeah.
I need the full story here.
I'm glad you brought it up because I wasn't going to let this end without. I mean, we're the two that have grown the quarantine beard since it all
Right.
started. So, yeah, I mean, March came around, like we couldn't really do anything. He's like, you know what, like it was more so sort of like I just didn't shave, I just didn't think about it because I wasn't going anywhere, wasn't seeing anyone. Eventually started growing. It's like shoot, like I've never grown my beard out this much. I think 3 months was the longest I ever grew my beard before in 2016. So like it was starting to grow, and I was like, you know what, like I've always wanted to like see what I look like with like a longer beard, and like I've never let my hair grow out. I've always wanted to see what my hair looks long. It's like I'm locked in here. I'm not really doing anything, and it's like why not let us see what happens? And to be clear, my wife hates it. She hates all the hair I have, and
Yep.
she's like, you need to shave. For the longest time, it was like, just let me know when it's gonna be gone. And like I wasn't sure. It's like I've wanted to see what it looks like, and so it's like for me, I keep saying like once in a lifetime thing. Like you know, I don't necessarily love having the beard, but I want to see what it looks like just the longer it gets. And at this point, end of October is the deadline, so I've got 2 more months of it,
Oh wow.
and then it's coming off. And so Savannah's a lot more happy now that I've given a deadline. Like, okay, this is when it's coming off. But I'm gonna keep letting it all grow out for 2 more months just to see what it's like, and just get a picture of it because like there's this always this like deep longing inside of like, you know what will a long beard be like? What will it be like to, get like put beard oil on and beard balm and just really put
Yeah.
stuff like beard wash in your beard. So I will say that deep longing is being fulfilled, and I'm very happy. I still got 2 months, and so we'll see where it goes. But it was kind of like this dream I've always had, and like at the end of 2020, what will I most be proud of? It very well may be growing out my hair.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm on a similar social experiment. Now, are you giving yourself till the end of October because you're gonna culminate this in some epic Halloween costume? Because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do a Halloween costume with like a beard, but also like where would you go? It's COVID, so
Like, exactly. That's kind of where, like, if I'm able to incorporate it into a Halloween costume, I most likely will. It'd be kind of awesome to like pull a little Santa Claus, dye it all white, and be Santa Claus for Halloween. But then again, I don't even know if I'll be able to do anything on Halloween. So, um,
that's so true. Have
it,
you have you been trimming the mustache at least? It looks like yours is a
I,
little bit more kempt.
I have to trim the mustache. I got good mustache genes. That thing grows so long and so bushy that like it's within my like it's getting in my mouth after like a week, and I have to trim it down.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, and I
trust
like
me,
I
I know. I've committed to mustache wax and it's not even doing enough because like I need to thin it in
awesome.
order for it to actually like do it. But I'm really
Oh
trying to
yeah.
just be like I didn't touch it at all for this long. Like
Yep.
so
Yep.
I want
Exactly.
to see where it gets to. But I mean at this point with the mustache wax, it's full circle curl. Like it's
That's
gross.
amazing. Yeah, that's like I've trimmed it up a little bit on the sides, nothing like too extreme, just like a little bit.
Hmm.
This I've mostly let it, but like try to get a few stray hairs, but for the most part, like not touched it. But yeah, the mustache, I did one, I did like one deep kind of like trim just because it was getting so thick.
Yeah,
I,
yours is
I
crazy thick. It's wild.
yeah, it gets very thick, and I'm like I'm clipping down here just to keep it out of my mouth, and I have to do that pretty frequently. And there's a good chance I probably have to do another just like thinning out in the next month or two. But yeah, it's been quite an experiment that I'll be glad I did once it's over, and I'll be glad when it's over as well. I like my hair shorter just in general, but I'm still waiting to see what this looks like. It gets a little longer. I've learned that my hair's not flowy, which is a
Yeah,
little
it's pretty
disappointment.
flowy.
Yeah, but it doesn't like flow down like
Oh.
I thought it might, but like not at all. It's more like puffy than flowy. So we'll
Oh.
see as it grows. We'll see as it grows a little bit longer, but fulfilling a lot of longings with the long hair.
You know what? You got to do something different in times like this because the times are already
Yeah,
so different. Like you got to do some difference that's like your choice and like you're in control of because you're not in control of the
yeah,
other stuff. So
exactly,
that's how I
exactly.
kind of feel about it. I'm hoping that I can hold out long enough that I feel comfortable enough going to like you know like a barber shop or something because I would love to have them like keep it as long as they can, but like trim it up and shape it and like see what the full
Yeah,
potential of this would be like groomed. But I don't
yep,
know that I'm going to make it because I don't think that things are going to get better by October 31st. And then after
yeah,
that, like we get into flu season and a supposed second spike. So I don't know if
yeah,
I'm going to be able to hold out until 2021 on this, but we'll see. I'll definitely like whenever I'm done with it, I'm going to have fun, like, and take it down in stages and
for sure.
for sure leave the mustache until the end and just have some epic mustache for like a week and
I love it.
just see what it is. But I like hardly recognize old photos of myself at this point, so it's gonna be a shock once it comes off.
That's what my wife will like show me an old photo of me, like, man, look how good you used to look. I'm like, I'm aware. We're almost there. Don't worry.
I know, just let me have this for a little bit
Yeah,
longer, just like a little bit
exactly,
longer. Oh
exactly.
God. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. This was great. Um, anything or any words you want to leave the community with here?
Just keep growing and developing. I think we've seen a lot of positive things, even though the season's been canceled. I think there's been a lot of cool things come out of this, and just I think you've probably mentioned it before the focus on content and just other things like businesses and just ideas around the sport. So I think it stinks that tournaments are canceled, but a lot that's been developed and come from this is exciting. So, keep that up, and have any questions on it. I'm always happy to help with whatever it is. Got a lot of experience in the sport, so just hit me up.
Love it. All right. Well, we're doing a new thing now where we're ending the podcast with the guest giving us their best let's go. And you already have a pretty epic one on file here. So epic that, in fact, I stole it, and it's my subscriber sound. That let's go video is legendary. But would you grace us with your best let's go before
Actually,
you leave?
I gotta get in character and ignore that my neighbors are gonna hate it, but
Yep.
let's go!
Woo! All right, sickness. Gonna have a fun time getting the peak out of that.
Oh yeah, for real.
All right. Well, good talking to you, Logan, and we'll see you on the next one. All right.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye, man.